Greetings of peace. I'm back. So yeah, we basically were covering the fact that all of these different stories that you read about in the Bible, like all your different prophets and things of that nature, your prophets were basically either come from older stories that were used in ancient culture, like for instance the Egyptian stories of the Metu Neter, or you have the stories of the Vedas, which documents the Hindu gods and deities. Then you have the Gilgamesh epics, which talks a lot about the Sumerian gods and deities, or whatever. Most of those stories made it into the Bible, and those stories go back further than the Bible. That's the important thing. The Bible was just the modern version of those stories. And it's just like this, really, because if you want to really kick it on that level, we can say it like this too. Hollywood and the movies that we watch, a whole lot of them are based on those same stories. So we could say that Hollywood and the film industry and the movies in the film industry are basically modern day scripts. People writing scripts. The priests wrote the scripts. See, that's who wrote them. It was the priests. And that's what people have to really understand when you get into understanding the Bible, is you understand that the priests wrote the scripts based off of another script. And I'm going to get into that script now. That script is based upon two key ingredients that break down to many examples. That script is based on numbers, and that script is based on planetary movements. Numbers and planetary movements. Your prophets, for instance, when you start talking about prophets, your prophets and the character of your prophets is a compilation of astrological data, like usually astrological signs. Like for instance, Moses represented the he represented the bull. Moses represented the Taurine energy. The whole story of Moses. Moses goes back to the Taurine energy. So you have Moses. Now you have Jesus. Jesus goes into Piscean energy. You have Aaron. Aaron deals with Aries energy. So each of your different prophets go back to different astrological signs. And you have a lot of numbers that are coded in the Bible, like 144 is a key number that's coded in the Bible. The number 12 is a key number. The number 13 is a very key number. The number 4 is a very key number. The number 22, the number 11. These are all key numbers that are located in the Bible and that are part of the Codex Inscriptus, the recipe that was used to come up with the scripts and the scriptures. It's to basically come up with this modern day play. At the time, it was a modern day play. That's basically what the Bible was. It was a modern day script for a play. And a lot of money was made off the Bible. In the King James Version, Shakespeare had a lot to do with writing a lot of the King James Version of the Bible. So I mean, it's basically a play. I mean, if you start thinking about Shakespeare, you start thinking about Hamlet and all of that, and Macbeth and all that type of stuff, and all the different plays that he wrote that were like plays, and then you think about the fact that he could have easily used his pen hand to concoct and write stories of the Bible based on certain occult principles. I mean, Shakespeare was a high occultist. He was a very high occultist. I could do a whole video on Shakespeare. I won't go into a lot of information about him here. But Shakespeare, his name is in the Bible. He even put his name in the Bible because he has a lot to do with penning a lot of the information in the Bible. And he knew Codex Inscriptus. He was on the level of a priest, Shakespeare, the modern day priest. And people fail to realize that plays and all of that stuff was the way that the ancients told the greatest story that was ever told, that was based on numbers and astrological movements. Like the story of Horus is the ancient play on the sun and the rising of the sun, which is the baby Horus, and then the setting of the sun, which is dealing with Set, and killing of Osiris and all of that. See, when you're dealing with the Egyptian mysteries, and the story of Set and Osiris is the story of Cain and Abel. You see, so all of this stuff, it sounds like I'm bouncing around, but what I'm showing you is that stories in the Bible go back to older stories, and those older stories go back to astrological data and numbers. And this astrological data and numbers was used to compile the characters of the Bible, and a lot of it was used based upon certain real world events, and the real world events were people. Most of the characters in the Bible were based on people. See, a lot of people don't realize this. Like, for instance, Jesus. The story of Jesus is based on a person. Now, when you read the story of Jesus in the Bible, a lot of the things that happened to him in the Bible was not based on the actual person. Like all the data in the Bible is not based on what the actual person went through, because you got to remember, it's a movie, it's a play. You could say it's based on true events, meaning that the concept of a revolutionary that did exist in Rome, that was Jesus, because Jesus was really a revolutionary, y'all. Like, if you really read the story of Jesus and reenact it as a movie, I mean, Jesus basically went against the powers that be at the time or whatever, which would make him a revolutionary. He went against the elite. And, well, actually, he was a part of the elite on one end, but then he rebelled or whatever. He was a part of the bloodline on one end, but then he rebelled against the elite. So there was a lot more to it than that. Jesus was a part of the elite. And I could do a whole video talking about that, but you know what I'm saying? Jesus was a part of the elite. And I know a lot of Christians probably don't want to hear that and stuff like that, because they're looking at him more like on a level of him being a spiritual guru type of dude, or like a monk type of dude. And you know, people get mad when people put real world character on Jesus and put him into a real world perspective. A lot of people get mad about that. But yeah, he was a part of the elite, but he was based on a real dude, and that's what I'm really pointing out. Like the story of Moses. The story of Moses is based on a real dude, Thutmose. Who was a pharaoh, Thutmose. You know what I'm saying? Like all these different pharaohs, like it's a whole book you can get on this, guys. Like to just really help you with this. It's a book that you can get called Jesus, Last of the Pharaohs, by, I think his name is Ralph Ellis. And it's actually several books he did, and he's talking about showing you how the stories in the Bible were based on the pharaohs. You see, because it was based on the Hyksos dynasty. All those different prophets in the Bible were based on the Hyksos dynasty. That's what you're reading about. And they were really pharaohs, and they weren't just broke guys walking around. They were rich. They had money, and he breaks that down too for those people that are religious about money and things like that. And that, you know what I'm saying, look at it like when you follow God, you're not supposed to have money. The prophets were rich in modern day terms based upon the amount of cattle and sheep and land and stuff like that that they had, and the amount of people that they were working with. They were kings. The prophets were kings. You're talking about kingship, and they were part of a bloodline, which would make them a part of the elite, part of a certain type of brotherhood. So all of this information is not random that I'm talking about. The character of the prophets coming from real people. All of these things, when you mesh them together, you get the greatest story ever told. The astrological data that they used to come up with these stories, documenting the precession of the equinoxes. That's another thing that the Bible documents. Each part of the Bible phases into different aspects or different ages. We call them ages in astrology. So you have what's called ages, like the age of Aquarius, the age of Aries, the age of Taurus. The Bible is documenting different ages. When you read in the Bible or whatever, it's documenting different ages. Like when they talk about the children of Israel making the Exodus and worshiping the golden calf, that's dealing with the age of the calf or the bull. See, that's going into that information. Or when they talk about say for instance Jesus telling his apostles that he would make them fishers of men. When he talks about being fishers of men, that's going into the age of Pisces, because Pisces deals with the fish. These were always the symbols that were used, and this is what the priests used to describe the stories. You see, because they knew the age, and those that knew what was going on knew that when the new story came out, that was the new information based upon the new astrology information that the priest was putting out through the scripts or the scriptures. So it's the same way that Hollywood does it now. Hollywood puts the new movies out, they putting out the new information based upon the scripts, the scriptures, based upon the story, or the cosmos, the astrological zodiac. You see, getting into that. So that's what it's really getting into or whatever. It's just getting into the fact that it's documenting the data and the movement of the planets. Jesus is called the bright and morning star. Lucifer is called the bright and morning star. Lucifer means the carrier of light. And a lot of cultists This is why a lot of occultists get into calling Jesus Lucifer. This is why, because both of them were the bright and morning star, documenting the movement of Venus. You see, when Jesus is called a bright and morning star, it's going into, and when Lucifer is called the bright morning star, this is talking about Venus. That's what it's actually talking about, the planet Venus. And this was the priest documenting the planet Venus. When you look at the Baphomet, the goat head, the Baphomet, that those people that know what I'm talking about, know what I'm talking about, the Baphomet, the upside down pentagram, to be more proper. The upside down pentagram is documenting the movement of Venus and a transit of Venus that takes place every 100 or so years. And Venus moves in a 15-year period. Venus moves in a pentagram shape or a Baphomet shape. And Venus being Lucifer, and this is why the Baphomet is always associated with the Luciferians, dealing with the Venusians or those beings that came from Venus and came to this earth. These are some of your Luciferians that came from the planet Venus, some of them being women. Yes, Lucifer is a woman. And most of those Luciferians, when they first came and incarnated, were women. You see, and they came down and incarnated as women. But eventually, the males incarnated later on. You see, so the Luciferian males did incarnate here too on this plane. So I know it sounds like I'm bouncing around, but it's not, because all of these terms are used in the Bible. This is why you use the term Lucifer, because there are a group of beings called the Luciferians, and all of this stuff is going back to planetary movements and dealing with star heritage and astrological data. And that's why I read the Bible as a metaphysician, because there's a lot of metaphysical jewels in the Bible. A lot of metaphysical jewels in the Bible. A lot of information is talked about in the Bible. You have information about crystals in the Bible. The information about the tarot is in the Bible. The tarot cards. People call people that use tarot cards pagans, but the priests use tarot cards. They just use them in a different form, but they use tarot cards. So how are you going to call me a pagan because I use tarot cards in my spiritual consultations and the priests use tarot cards? You see, so it's just basically, it's the greatest story that's never told, and the meanings have been lost. So now people have basically got caught up on the exoteric aspect. The exoteric aspect, which is the drama part. People are stuck on that part. You see, people are stuck on the actual story, believing that it actually happened, word for word, page for page, book for book, sentence for sentence. Jesus didn't really walk on water. You want to know what that's talking about? When Jesus walked on water, that's talking about the rays of the sun as they dance on the waters as it rises every morning. You see, that's what it's talking about. Jesus didn't walk on water. You see, a man didn't walk on water. It's talking about the rays of the sun. Jesus is the sun. And I'll go into a little bit of that information here. Jesus, his ministry lasts for a year. I've talked about this before. Jesus' ministry lasts for a year, documenting going through the different 13 astrological constellations. And all of them are in the story of Jesus. You can find data about every single astrological constellation in the story of Jesus. And I won't go into that here, but I'll do a video. I'll do a video one day, and I'm going to talk all about Jesus, like the metaphysics of Jesus. I'm just going to be breaking down different things that I've picked up and data that I've learned about Jesus over the years. And the story of Jesus is documenting going through all of those different constellations, from Pisces to Aries. In that story, or from Aries to Pisces, excuse me, is in that story. So all of these things can be found in the Bible. Jesus' ministry lasts for 33 years, dealing with the number 33, where Jesus died, and transformed and resurrected at 33. Not his ministry. His ministry lasts for a year, but Jesus stayed on this plane until he was 33, which is dealing with the 33 degrees, which is dealing with the 33 degrees or levels of becoming a master, because it's approximately 33 degrees in each astrological sign. See, this is where they get all of these things from. It's approximately 33 degrees in each astrological sign, and when you master each sign, you become a master in that particular sign. But you see, in astrology, when you get into the astrological doctrine, we deal with 360 going into 720 degrees or whatever. So, I mean, it's a lot of information. It's a lot of information, and all of this information is in the Bible. This is why in the Lodge and in a lot of secret societies, they use the Bible. You see, because they use the Bible, they read out the Bible too. It's not just in the church. It's not just in the church. The Bible is used in many circles and many secret societies because it's codex and scriptus, as I keep pointing out here. It's codex and scriptus. It's coded information. And it's taught in the mystery schools, and this is how they pass down the jewels and the keys through the Bible. The story of Tubal-Cain. See, I'm not going to go into all of this information. I could go into all this information if I really wanted to. The story of Solomon. What is that really talking about? All of these things. Soul on man. Solomon. Soul on man. Solo man. Soul. Sun. On is another name for the sun. Man. The man of light. Solomon. And wisdom. You see, was a king. Document. See, they made him into a king. They allowed him to be a king in the Bible, but then some of the prophets, some of the figures or characters, I should say, or the stars, they make it to prophets. And they do that for a reason, you know what I'm saying, because it's a difference in translation, you know what I'm saying, but all of these guys were like kings. They had money. These guys that you're calling prophets, they were all like kings. I mean, they had a vast estate. They had a vast estate, all of these different prophets or whatever. So, I mean, it's the metaphysics of the Bible. The greatest story that's never been told. I mean, bunch of astrological data locked into the Bible. I mean, Jesus dies for 3 days in the Bible, right? On December the 22nd, approximately, the sun stands still. The sun appears to die. It reaches the bottomless pit. And it's resurrected after the 3rd day. On December the 25th, the sun is resurrected. And light begins to come back to the planet. Between December the 22nd and December the 25th, these are the shortest days of the year. The shortest days of the year. After that, the days become longer and longer and longer and longer, all the way up to the point of the summer solstice. The days become longer and longer and longer up to the summer solstice point. After the summer solstice, the days begin to get shorter and shorter and shorter up until the winter solstice. So this is documenting the winter solstice, the story of the death of Jesus, documenting the death of the sun and the resurrection and the transformation of the sun into a new sun or a new year. You see, Jesus' ministry lasts for a year and it ends in death. It has to end in death. And it ends in death at a fucus. In a fucus. You see, well, actually in Scorpio. It goes into the halls of death in Scorpio and it dies in a fucus. And is transformed and healed because a fucus is the healer. The healer, and it heals, and then it comes back in Sagittarius, the fire sign, and it resurrects. You see, Sagittarius starting on December the 18th, according to 13 Signs Astrology. You see, this is the story that has never been told. And 13 is very much a part of the Bible. And I have to point that out. Jesus and his disciples make 13. Jacob and his sons, Yaakov, Israel and his sons, the 12 tribes of Israel, his 12 sons make 13. 13 figures, you see. The Jews know of this 13, you see, and they know for a reason, because in the Jewish calendar, there's 12 months, but guess what? There's a hidden month, a 13th month, I believe it's called. I forgot the name of it, it escapes me. I believe it's called Adar, the 13th month of the Jewish calendar, that is used sometime to account for the missing time, the unknown factor. The leap year is a part of the unknown factor, going into the number 4, you see, because it's a leap year, I think, approximately every 4 years, which is the number 3 plus 1 is 4. The number 13 breaks down to the number 4. So that's really still dealing with the 13, because they have to put in the extra date or the extra month or the extra date or whatever, like when it comes to, in the Western calendar, they put in an extra day in February, but in the Jewish calendar, they put in an extra month, making it 13 months in the Jewish calendar. This is a mystical month that is put in the Jewish calendar because number 13 is the number of the unknown factor. It is the mystical number of the Bible. It's the number of the woman, because the woman is God. The woman is God. In the book of Revelations, there is a woman with 12 stars over her head, representing the 12 constellations of the zodiac. But the woman is the center, or the Ophiuchus point, making it 13. Or the ruler with a crown of stars on her head. Zodiacus. Or Zodicus, excuse me, Zodicus is where the term zodiac comes from, dealing with the woman. You see, Zodicus was a woman. And that's going into a lot of information dealing with astrology that I'm not going to go into in this video here, but it's always been 13 constellations. It's always been 13 phases of the moon. Because the woman lines up and connects with the number 13. Because the number 13 is a feminine number, a karmic number, representing the woman. And this is why the male and male rulership deals with the number 12. And they had to take out, they couldn't deal on 13. Patriarchy couldn't. So patriarchy had to vibrate on number 12. So that's why they say Jesus had 12 disciples, but they don't count him. Like he wasn't a part of the clique. Or like Jacob and his son, he's the father of his son. So that's 13. You know what I'm saying? And people don't want to count that type of stuff. They don't want to count the missing link. It's 12 stars over the woman's head, but she makes 13. Because somebody got to wear the crown, right? So she's 13. So that's how you got to look at it. Like, and really the book of Revelation tells you the truth because the woman is wearing the crown. She's the key. She wears the crown. She is the keeper of my story or the mysteries. It's in the female, you see, because her sex organs are internal, which makes her a mystery. And the male sex organs are external, which doesn't make the male a mystery. The male is more of a warrior, you see, going into his story. Because his story basically goes back to war over land and battles being fought. And ever since his story has been being written, there's been war. You see, so these are the things that people need to realize when you're talking about reading the Bible. They got wars being fought in the Bible. People get murdered, sacrificed. Let me point that out in the Bible. Because you have to make a sacrifice to the planets. You have to make a sacrifice to the planets. And that's a long story. And the priests knew this. Priests knew this. So many of your gods in the Bible, because there's multiple gods in the Bible. And that's something else I want to point out. When you see the term God in the Bible, you don't realize that sometimes Ammon is there. Ammon. A-M-O-N. The Christians say Amen. Or Ammon. Dealing with the hidden principle. Ammon-Ra. Which is an Egyptian deity. That's in the Bible when you read it in Hebrew. Ammon is in Hebrew. That's right. The term Ammon is used in Hebrew. The hidden one. The Ammonite. So people just fail to realize that when you see the name God in there, you don't know what's really being used. Theos, Adonai. These all have different meanings. Baal. What do they mean? Elohim. These are all different names that are used in the Bible when you read it in the original languages instead of God. And all of these things are talking about different planetary movements. The gods that you speak of are talking about astrological movements that are found in nature. You see, and energies that are found in the solar system. And people are misinterpreting these things and are looking at them like these are real people. It's not real people. These stories did not happen word for word. This is the greatest story ever told. Coded information. Coded. Each story in the Bible represents 7 different stories. 7 different versions to that one story, I mean. This is what I'm trying to tell you. Like the story of Adam. There's 7 different versions to the story of Adam. Cotman. There's 7 different versions to the story of Jesus. There's like multiple layers to it. It's multiple layers to it. So I hope that helped. That's my little spiel on the metaphysics of the Bible and exactly what's going on in the Bible. What's exactly going on, how exactly it came about, and basically how to read these stories with the open eye of Heru or Ra so that you can decipher the information and know that it's telling the stories about astrological movements. And not the stories that you think that is being told word for word. These things, it's not his story. It's not historical. It's more so mythology, which is stories. It's more so mythology. That's what the Bible is, or stories that are told that teach lessons through astrological data. So I hope that helped. And until we meet again, I'll leave you in peace and prosperity.